What I ended up with is a modular system, which I ended up picking, where the units were now side by side. Instead of having two extra walls to because of a central balcony, I ended up making sure they share a central wall, like it becomes one concrete wall where the staircase is. Where the staircase is attaching, because it's supposed to be a very load bearing wall, and it's supposed to be holding two sets of floating staircases and also having slabs attached to it. So rather than just trying to figure out where the columns will be and where the heavy concrete wall is going to be, just decided to say they're going to be all sort of concrete walls. And then now, when they were aligned, they looked very funny. So I decided to start offsetting them. So you end up creating a series of offset apartments, both in height and in plan. And then you see, as I was speaking of the balconies, the way the balconies keep acting as individual items, giving character to the whole thing. Um, and then now, I'm highlighting the front walls, because what I had done was I had cut up the offset part of the walls so that I can manipulate the coloring and the texturing as I'm working towards the end. Now I'm testing to see if maybe if I can change some parts of the walls to have different wall thicknesses, will it even add more character and aesthetic to the building as you're looking at it in its plain whiteness. Because as long as the building works in its plain colors, in its black and white, definitely when you're applying colors, texture, and what have you, it's definitely going to work. As a technologist, as I keep saying, I'm going to keep repeating this, always be thinking about construction. How are they going to do this? Because the moment you stop thinking about how they're going to do it, you're going to have a headache in detailing and producing construction drawings for this. So as you're going, this is the beauty about BIM. It allows you to do a lot of things as you go. So now I'm developing here my balconies. Do I want them floating? So now I'm experimenting with trying to have supports at the end. And I'm thinking having this L-shaped supported balcony is interesting, because it's giving extra character, and it's continuing with the language we have of horizontal, vertical, and clear plain lines, horizontal and vertical, horizontal and vertical. And now what I wanted to experiment with is to see if the same thing after this, because now I just want to see if the array of these L-shaped or inverted L balcony slash feature wall are arrayed into the whole series of units. That alone, and then they're cantilevered in one end. Will that alone be enough? Because so far in the whole design, I don't have a cantilever. So you want to be thinking about that as you're developing a language. Most important thing as you're working in design and all of that stuff, you want to be able to develop a language. You want to be able to develop a rhythm that's repeated. And now my challenge here is that if there's cantilevered balconies of mine with an inverted L, I've developed a language, but that language is actually offset from the main building. So it's sort of an independent language. To an extent, it's going to look like an afterthought. So I wanted to first look at them all arrayed in this, which is basically what I'm doing piece for piece, one after the other, adjusting each of these fin walls to stretch towards the end of the balcony. As you're doing this, you also need to be thinking about the balustrading you'll use on top of this this balcony. What balcony what balustrading or framing will work best. As I was developing this, I realized I'd been working with absolute minimalism, and everything was just basic plane forms, a ground plane, a basic floor plane, a wall plane, a roof plane. So definitely I was going to work with maybe either a toughened glass type of balustrading in terms of guarding the balcony. So definitely it was going to be transparent for me, because the main facade, which is where even my balustrading was going to be a transparent face or glazing or glazed facade basically. So you wanted something that works well with that. Everything was going to be minimal. You don't want too much happening. So now I've managed to create an array of all these balconies, like inverted L type of features. I wasn't quite sure with what I was saying, because they were sort of an isolated feature which stood alone. I hadn't repeated any cantilevers anywhere. in as much as the floating staircase is a cantilever itself, but it's within. And the way I'd use this one as a steel, it had a sort of a base support under each tread. So, and this one is it was really very independent. So I was also thinking, now if I'm going to close off the support there, how was I going to do it, right? To cut off the cantilever, how was I going to do it? But I didn't want to get frustrated with that. Come towards the back. This is the other important thing as you're modeling, is when you get frustrated with one thing, quickly move on to the next thing. So definitely I was going to have a bedroom at the back there, and the opening, I was thinking, should I have a very large opening, something like that? So you want to be rotating it to really see if the aesthetic comes out, or the aesthetic speaks to you, because you want the language, the building, to speak to you as you're developing this. Moving forward, so far so good. I liked what I was doing here. Now I wanted to see the glazing, because even the way you want to glaze your building, you want to make sure the way each of the panes come together, the sizes and the thicknesses of your frame, your melons, the transoms, and all of that stuff. Everything really needs to be well thought of. And then here you open your curtain wall, you want to get into the frames. This is how you can quickly adjust the frames. The boundary is basically it's straightforward. It's plain. It's the boundary of your frame. The mullions are the internal division. The mullions and the transoms are the internal divisions. So basically, we can just say your mullions are sort of in this case, you're working in ArchiCAD, are sort of your, what can I say, your vertical or your horizontal divisions, and the transoms, they're the other part. So you quickly want to be able to adjust it to something you can work with, and this is where you can change the type of framing, whether it's a butt glazed or a generic type of frame. I think the diagrams are self-explanatory there. And then now you change to a polyline drawing setup, and I wanted to make sure I adjust the offset to at least 0, because I don't want it to be offset from the line I'm using to draw. So now you just make sure everything aligns to the facade, the opening within the facade, and you make sure the outer side is where the sun is. Then the modules are too tiny for me. I don't like the modular look, but right now I'm just interested in making sure everything is where it's supposed to be. So I don't want it to be flush, as if I'm creating sort of a Victorian type of building, or a certain era type of building from the past. I really do not like buildings that have flush glazing with the wall. So I want it to be offset inside. Pull it up. Simple like that, you've set it up. But then now I want the glazing to be very large panes, because I've created modular items that communicate a certain amount of width against a certain proportion of length. So you want to communicate that even in your type of glazing, repeat that language. But even as you're doing this, you need to be careful with the dimensions, because you need to be thinking, is this actually practical? When they go to site, is there any manufacturer we can actually do this? We can do this without actually, the heights of your glazing. Can you achieve the height of the glazing, maybe at cost, or do you have to now start importing certain things? So you always need to be thinking about this, meaning you have to always be in communication with your manufacturers. So you play around with your dimensions here, teetering around between practicality and design work, trying to make sure proportions and the modularity of your proportions is quite well. So this is sort of the language that I've developed, like a narrow width and a little bit of a stretched length. So in this case, it's the height, narrow width, stretched height. So the language is really the same. I pull the slab inwards because I want the glazing to be sort of a full glazing from first floor to the second floor, to create a very interesting front, because you should be able to visualize these things as you're doing them in each of the processes. Now the challenge right now here is the internal wall upstairs on the second floor is offset from the mullion of the curtain wall. So I'm just going to adjust that, make sure that part of the frame is adjusted, and select all of them. You're editing in 3D, and then you adjust to make sure it aligns with that wall. because when things are aligning quite well and you've created a very simple minimalist language, everything works quite fine. Now the practicality is, remember, you have bylaws you need to follow, building codes, so definitely I need to have openable sashes there. So an openable sashes are not going to be very wide, so you just need to make sure you have a reduced portion of the structure where you're gonna have openable sashes. This is for me. I was gonna just have top hang sashes right at the end there, sort of like 3-pane top hang sashes for openings right at the end over there. So this is how you develop it. As you're seeing each part. As I'm doing it, you select the frame you want, the part of the frame you want. In this case, it's refusing. It's giving me a little bit of difficulty to work around. I've tried isolating the frame tool. It's still giving me a headache. So now I probably would have to go inside of the frame, because it's part glazed, meaning it's only appearing from the inside part of the system. So then after I've selected that, I can go outside and create copies of it to make sure Control U allows you to create copies. Then I want two copies of that -1 at the end. I don't want it to go all the way to the end. I want it to leave an equal distance towards the end. So you stretch that. Then once you've stretched, you say okay, seems like it's going to create one. I have no idea why. Let's try that again. I'd entered 2, so probably everything is fine. It's just a graphics issue. It's not displaying the other one as it's developing. So let's see what's going to happen. Oh, so I didn't put the 2, just that it wasn't displaying them graphically. So definitely this is what I wanted to look. There's the practical part, there's the design part, and everything is looking quite fine so far. So I'm able to take this and start replicating it all over the site.